Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Edna Tse.
And I'm Leung. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
A bomb scare forced the evacuation of hundreds of people from hotel on Austin Road.
CY Leung says there's still no update on missing booksellers.
More than 60,000 runners have taken part in this year's Hong Kong Marathon despite wet and windy weather. About 1,600 people had to be evacuated from a hotel in Tsim Sha Tsui, where two suspected explosives were found.
They turned out to be fake, but police are still investigating the case as a bomb threat. Arthur Okiola reports.
Police arrived at the BP International Hotel on Austin Road in Tsim Sha Tsui this morning at 11 a.m. after receiving a call that suspected bomb-like objects had been discovered. The objects were said to have been found in the male toilets on the first floor of the building. Some 1,600 people had to be evacuated from the building, while some guests on the upper floors were asked to remain in their rooms as officers carried out their investigations at the scene. Officers inspected the lobby of the hotel, and bomb disposal experts and robots were also deployed at the scene for investigations. Felix Chan, Tsim Sha Tsui Assistant Divisional Commander, said the device was not a bomb and could not have caused an explosion. Chan said 5 LPG canisters attached to 2 timers were found in the men's toilet on the first floor and concluded that they were not explosives. Even though the fakes couldn't be detonated, the case is still being investigated as a bomb threat. No one has been arrested yet. Officers are trying to determine who's behind the scare and are appealing for any information on the case. Arthur Okiola, ATV News.
Chief Executive Leung Cheng-ying has failed to provide any updated information on missing bookstore owner Leung, who vanished more than 2 weeks ago.
Leung only said he will report to the public once the situation allows him to do so. Vicky Wan reports.
It has been more than 2 weeks since Li Bo, a bookseller who sold sensitive materials about the mainland, was found missing. There have been concerns that mainland authorities may have been meddling in local law enforcement since Li's disappearance. But once again, Chief Executive Leung Cheng-ying has failed to ease those concerns. Leung said he will report to the public soon after the situation allows him to do so. He reiterated again that the administration has been following the case closely and had expressed the SAR's government's concerns to all levels of the mainland authorities. The chief executive was speaking after attending an event at the airport for the underprivileged. Around 250 people from 90 families were offered a free trip on an aircraft. Some children were also given a taste of what it's like being ground staff. Many of them were passengers on a plane for the first time and were offered a free meal and a mock passport. The aircraft flew above the South China Sea and the tour lasted for around 90 minutes. Vicky Wan, ATV News.
More than 60,000 runners braved the wet and windy weather to take part in this year's Hong Kong Marathon. And as usual, African nations still managed to dominate the main races. Here's Arthur Okiola.
It was already raining heavily as runners gathered at the starting point for this year's Hong Kong Marathon in Tsim Sha Tsui. There had been fears that the annual race would be called off because of a red rainstorm or Typhoon 3 warning, but things went ahead as planned. Chief Secretary Carrie Lam oversaw the start of the marathon. The racers made their way along Nathan Road past Mong Kok as part of a revised route for both the full and half marathon before the race took them to West Kowloon. Unfortunately for some runners, this caused confusion for them, and they ended up going along the wrong route. But just like in previous years, the participants passed the Tsing Ma Bridge and the Western Corridor before the 42-kilometer race finished in Victoria Park. It wasn't just the routing that saw a change. This year, the first 10 runners to cross the finish line were eligible to run the Olympic marathon in Brazil. Raincoats were a common sight during this year's race, and many of the competitors said this was the first time they had ran in the rain. Although not all 74,000 runners who signed up took part, organizers said they were still pleased with the 83% turnout. The weather also didn't stop a few from dressing up for the event, like these two who donned shark costumes to call on people not to eat shark's fins. Along the way, there were some casualties, with 6 men and 4 women taken to hospital, although there were no serious injuries. In the end, first-time Hong Kong marathon runner Mike Mutai Kirpatich won the men's race in 2 hours, 12 minutes and 12 seconds, narrowly beating fellow Kenyan Lawrence Chireno.
The city is very good. Yes, I like it, and I want to compete next day again.
Haile Gebrselassie took the women's race in 2 hours, 36 minutes and 51 seconds.
I didn't expect to win, but God's helping me, and then I win. I'm so happy.
Local runner Christy Yu, who will run the marathon at the Rio Olympics this summer, finished 6th with a time of 2 hours and 38 seconds. After finishing 2nd last year, the Philippines' Mary Joy Tabel won the women's half marathon in 1 hour, 21 minutes and 41 seconds.
But I was quite disappointed with my time because I am 1 minute slower from my previous time here in the Hong Kong. Maybe it was the rain that affects my performance today because it was raining from start to finish, and also during the downhill part, it was quite slippery.
Britain Jack Martin took the men's 10-kilometer race in 31 minutes and 45 seconds, setting a new record time for the event. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
Innovation and Technology Chief Nicholas Yang says he will do his best to create an ideal environment for the development of the IT industry. Yang added he will also encourage the government to use the products of local laboratories. Vicky Wan reports.
Innovation and Technology Secretary Nicholas Yang has pledged to do his best to create an ecosystem for developing the IT industry, regardless of how long his government term is. Speaking on a radio program this morning, Yang continued his bid to gain support for the matching fund for local startups initiative. The policy address splashed out $2 billion, aiming to match the capital provided by private venture capitalists. Yang said the practice has been well received in other countries and reassured the public that all partnership programs here will be highly transparent to avoid conflicts of interest. In an effort to foster domestic scientific research, the IT chief said he will also encourage government bureaus to use the products of local laboratories. The administration has also earmarked $2 billion to support universities' midstream applied research projects whose results have commercial potential. The universities will have their say on what types of study they would like to do, with the government there to provide incentives and resources to the institutions, Yang said. As if the injection is a rebuttal to the speculation that Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has discouraged donations from businessmen to universities, Yang called on the public not to confuse government subsidies with public and private giving. He said there was no need to interpret the intention behind every donation. Vicky Wan, ATV News.
China has warned Taiwan to abandon hallucinations about independence shortly after the results of the election.
The official Xinhua News Agency also warned that any moves towards independence were like a poison that would cause Taiwan to perish. Shortly after the landslide victory of President-elect Tsai Ing-wen, China has warned it would oppose any move towards independence. Taiwan's main opposition Democratic Progressive Party scored a landslide victory, enabling Tsai to be the island's first woman president. Tsai won 6.89 million votes. Kuomintang candidate Eric Chu got 3.81 million, while People's First Party candidate Sung Chu-yu grabbed 1.57 million. Tsai, who took center stage to declare her victory, also gave a stern message to Beijing that the island's democratic system, national identity and international space must be respected, and any forms of suppression will harm the stability of cross-strait relations. Tsai's comments have resulted in a string of warnings from China. China's Taiwan Affairs Office said Beijing was determined to defend the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. China's Foreign Ministry also issued a statement saying Taiwan is an internal matter for China. It went on that there is only one China in the world. The mainland and Taiwan both belong to that one China, and that China's sovereignty and territorial integrity will not brook being broken up. The ministry added that the results of the Taiwan region election do not change this basic fact and the consensus of the international community. The official Xinhua news agency also warned Taiwan that any moves towards independence were like a poison that would cause Taiwan to perish. Chinese state-run media Global Times has warned Taiwan to abandon its hallucinations about pushing for independence, and that if Tsai's administration sought to cross the red line like former President Chen Shui-bian, Taiwan would meet a dead end.
Turning overseas, sanctions against Iran have been lifted following confirmation that it has stuck to a nuclear deal struck last July.
And in a further sign of warming US-Iranian relations, both sides have also agreed to release prisoners to each other. Lee Faulkner reports.
In an announcement made in Vienna, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Yukiya Amano, confirmed that Iran has complied with the conditions of the deal agreed between Iran and 6 world powers last July.
Today, I released a report confirming that Iran has completed the necessary preparatory steps to start the implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action.
The deal requires Iran to limit its nuclear activities, in particular those that affect its ability to produce a nuclear weapon, in return for the lifting of crippling sanctions. This will unfreeze about $100 billion of assets and allow the country to sell oil freely and make use of the global finance system. Through social media, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani congratulated his country on achieving the deal, saying, "I thank God for this blessing and bow to the greatness of the patient nation of Iran." Flanked by Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, the EU's foreign policy chief Federica Mogherini confirmed that implementation day of the deal had indeed arrived.
As Iran has fulfilled its commitments, today multilateral and national economic and financial sanctions related to Iran's nuclear program are lifted in accordance with the JCPOA.
US Secretary of State John Kerry spoke to the Israelis and representatives from US Republicans who oppose the deal and are skeptical Iran will stick to it.
Iran has undertaken significant steps that many, and I do mean many, people doubted would ever come to pass. And that should be recognized, even though the full measure of this achievement can only be realized by assuring continued full compliance in the coming years.
In a further sign of the thaw in relations between Washington and Tehran, Iran has released Washington Post journalist Jason Rezaian, who was jailed in November last year for espionage. 4 others have also been released. In return, the US has granted clemency to 7 Iranians who were being held for sanctions busting. Lee Faulkner, ATV News.
In golf, Americans topped the leaderboard at the Sony Open and another title for a French veteran at the Dakar Rally. After 13 grueling stages over 2 weeks, Stefan Petterhansel has clinched his 12th Dakar Rally title in Argentina. The French Dakar veteran claimed his 6th win in the car category to add to his 6 motorcycle wins. His Peugeot teammate Sebastian Loeb triumphed in the final stage of the rally to Rosario, but it was Petterhansel who celebrated the overall victory. Defending champion Nasser Al Attiyah settled for 2nd place overall in his Mini. Toby Price was victorious in the motorcycle category and became the first Australian to win the Dakar Rally. The 28-year-old finished 4th on the final day to wrap up the title. It was another perfect day for golf at the 3rd round of the Sony